What's up, everyone, and welcome back to HBCU Game Day. It is week 12 of the football season, and we are here to preview some big matchups for you guys. We have a lot of classics. We have 3 teams in the SWAC West that are still in contention for the SWAC championship game, and we have a big matchup in the MEAC that can determine who is going to the Celebration Bowl. I am Symone Stanley. He is Wilton Jackson. Wilton, how are you feeling?
Symone, I'm feeling good. It's week 12. We have a lot to talk about. Just when we thought the SWAC West was going to be solidified in this crazy SWAC West that we've been dealing with all season, it's still crazy in week 12.
Child, a lot is going down this weekend, so let's go ahead and get into it. Let's start with Alabama State at Prairie View. Now, Alabama State is out of it. FAMU has already locked up the SWAC East, but it's still football. It's still pride. It's still rivalry games. Prairie View A&M is still fighting for a place in the SWAC championship game. What do you see in this one?
So, Symone, when I see this game, I look at a close game between Alabama State and Prairie View, and I look at a Prairie View team that has a chance to make it to make a SWAC title appearance for the second time in 3 seasons. But I'm not going to lie to you. When I look at that Alabama State team, I automatically think about their defense. Hornets defense has been lethal all year, and then when I look at Prairie View and the way that they've been able to have success this season, I just feel like they're running into an Alabama State team that's hot. And so I think the Panthers will essentially not be able to overcome this Hornets defense, a unit that's slowed down. Pretty much every opposing offense is faced all season, even when Alabama State lost to FAMU and Alcorn. So I just really see Alabama State getting this win against Prairie View anywhere between 3 to 6 points. And I think the way that Alabama State gets this win, obviously they're going to have to contain Trazion Conley. This is a Hornets defense that has shown all season that, again, that it can slow down any opposing offense. So right now, Alabama State is more stronger in stopping the run. They're second in the SWAC versus defending the pass, which is 6th. They're currently ranked 6th in the SWAC. So when I look at like what Prairie View does, everything starts and begins with Trazion Conley. And of course, the running game that they have with Ahmad Antoine and Jamarius Brooks. But a lot of what Conley is able to do is based off what the running backs are able to do to help him in that regard. So I'm thinking that, Alabama State strong against the run. Prairie View doesn't have that success on the ground game this week, which makes Trazion Conley's job very much difficult a little bit more. And so I just think that Alabama State is going to be able to contain him in a big way. And then also I look at the connection that Damon Stewart and Keyshawn Johnson have been building over the last couple of weeks. And Coach Eddie Robinson alluded to it in the call this week on the SWAC. They've been building this chemistry for the last at least 3 to 4 weeks. And that chemistry continued to build all last week. And obviously Keyshawn Johnson had 84 yards on 7 receptions and a touchdown. And Damon Stewart threw for over 148 yards in that game against Mississippi Valley. So I think if Alabama State is able to continue that connection between those two, it bodes well for them. And I think also something to remember when they faced this same team last year, they had 4 turnovers in that game. This is a game where they have to essentially limit the turnovers if they want to get this particular win against Prairie View.
Like you said, Prairie View is still fighting for a chance to make it to the SWAC championship game. Another team that needs a win this weekend is Alcorn. Now, they're going to Jackson State University to face them in the Soul Bowl. Jackson State is out of it. They're out of it in the SWAC East. However, this is a home game for the Tigers. We're close to the end of the season. They still want to get wins regardless. So Alcorn State is going to have to be on their toes if they want to take down the Jackson State Tigers. What are you seeing in this one?
Symone, I'm seeing a very close game. A very close game. You're talking about a game last year that came down, if you remember, a Travis Hunter catch in the right corner of the end zone to give Jackson State the win. Obviously, under Coach Prime. Coach Prime is no longer there. So I still see a close game. I will say this, Alcorn has not lost back-to-back games since early September. And I can assure you, after the loss they just had against Texas Southern, they're going to come into the vet motivated to win. But I do think Jackson State walks away and they get an 8th win on the season in TC Taylor's first year. And I think they're going to do it based off the fact that the way that they will need to do it to get that 8th win is they're going to have to start fast. Jackson State has notoriously started slow, especially at home. Coach Taylor has talked about that after every game. This is a offensive unit, obviously under Jacobian Morgan, his 4th start of the season. This is the toughest defense he's going to face in his 4 starts against Alcorn. So he must be smart with the football. Of course, anything with Jackson State on offense starts. It also coincides with their running attack too. So we know that they're going to be looking at Desmond Moultrie, J.D. Martin, Ahmad Miller, and specifically of the fact that J.D. Martin has experience playing in this game. I expect him to have more of a leadership role and a starting role in this particular game. And then, of course, in terms of defense, they're going to have to be – Jackson State's defense is definitely going to be challenged with stopping Aaron Allen and Jarvion Howard. JSU, for the most part, coming into this game is limiting its opponents to 23.5 points per game. But in their last 3 games, they have a combined average of 13 points. They've given up a combined average of 13 points to their opponents. And they also lead the SWAC in interceptions. So those stats are going to be put on – they're going to be tested on Saturday. But I feel like if they can do that, I feel like they can have a fast start and maintain that same intensity coming into the second half. I think Jackson State walks away with a close win.
Let's look at the MEAC because things got crazy last weekend when Howard beat North Carolina Central. Now Howard controls their own destiny for the Celebration Bowl. If Howard beats Morgan State this weekend, the Howard Bison will be making the trip to the Celebration Bowl. I feel like very few people had that on their bingo cards. Howard controls their own destiny. Talk about the momentum that they're going to have going into this game, the motivation they're going to have going into this game. Morgan State has been very competitive this season. What are you seeing?
Symone, you said it best. Last week, how many times have we said on this show that it's North Carolina Central versus everybody else in the MEAC? And up until last week, that's what it looked like. But after last week, I had to kind of drop my mouth and say, well, the MEAC is still in contention. For real. And like when you really look at this Howard team, like they have the pieces to do it. You're talking about a Howard team that's 3-0 at Green Stadium this season. The Bison have won the last 5 in this series against Morgan State. And when I look at this, I'm gonna give my tip to Larry Scott's squad to come out on top in this game, and essentially get this win. But I will say this, it's not going to be easy because obviously we know Morgan State is very tough on defense. And that's, obviously kudos to head coach Damon Wilson. But I think Howard is going to get this win based off of a solid performance from Quentin Williams. Obviously, we know what he's done all season. He's thrown for more than 2,000 yards, 16 touchdowns. But more specifically, in the 5 games that Howard has won this year, he's averaged 215 passing yards. He's completed more than 70% of his passes in those games. And so against North Carolina Central alone, he completed 69.7%, and he also had 3 touchdowns through the air. So considering, Morgan State is going to be a strong defensive squad looking to stop him, he's going to have to be on his A game for Howard to win this game. And of course, if you haven't heard by now, Howard always has their trio of running backs, Eden James, Jared Hunter, and Ian Wheeler. If there was ever a game with the MEAC crown depended on it, this is the game they have to have their absolute best game to get the win. Because it comes down to this. It's all or nothing.
Ciao! All eyes are going to be on that game this weekend. Now, North Carolina Central is taking on Delaware State. And again, if Howard wins against Morgan State, they're in. It's done. They're headed to ATL. They're headed to the Celebration Bowl. But if Howard loses and North Carolina Central beats Delaware State, then North Carolina Central is back in the driver's seat. They're back in command of representing the MEAC in the Celebration Bowl. This should be a game where Central is heavily favored, but are you seeing anything in this matchup?
I see that I'm going to pick Central to win this. I don't see them having back-to-back losses to end the season. I see them winning this game anywhere between 14 to 21 points. But I will say this. In the last couple of meetings between the two teams, they have been close. And when I look at this Delaware State team, it's not a team like if you look at their record, you would say like, oh, they don't stand a chance against North Carolina Central. But essentially, when you look at the two of the Hornets made losses to Howard and on the road to Morgan State, they lost both of those games essentially by a touchdown. So this is not a pushover team. This definitely shouldn't be considered a trap game for them or a game to look over, which we know it won't be because they lost last week. And so I'm looking for North Carolina Central to get back on track. And obviously that starts with Davius Richard and him getting back on track. Last week he was limited to 77 passing yards. That's not going to get you a win in anybody's case in a game typically. And for North Carolina Central, he has to be much better than that. And obviously give credit to Howard's defense, but he has to be much better than that for Central to get the win. And I think he does. He's going to have a more productive game against Delaware State. You're talking about a team that, is not necessarily statistically the best when it comes to defense. And so I think that Richard gets back to his typical way of having success for North Carolina Central and getting the win for them. Also, what we also saw last week is the rushing attack for the Eagles was not as prominent as it normally is. And that's going to be a thing as well. You got to think North Carolina Central had a total of 11 first downs last week, only 11. That's not like the Eagles offense. This is an offense that we've seen consistently time and time again, be able to stay on the field to get first downs on third downs. And I'm expecting them to get back to that, to get back to that. Also, specifically on defense, before Howard's 50-point explosion against North Carolina Central, the only two teams that scored 40 or more points against North Carolina Central were Campbell and UCLA. I don't see Delaware State scoring nearly, not even probably half of that many points that Howard did, and I think that their defense is going to be ready, and I think North Carolina Central gets this win.
It's going to be, like I said, this is a big weekend, you guys, a big weekend. We could be finding out who's headed to the Celebration Bowl. North Carolina Central is, regardless, going to be playing to win in that game against Delaware State, no matter what happens in Howard versus Morgan. But let's take it back to the SWAC. We have the Florida Classic, one of the biggest classics in HBCU football. Bethune-Cookman taking on the FAMU Rattlers. This is at Camping World Stadium. This always brings out a whole lot of fans. So this is going to be a good one, good vibes. FAMU already locked up the SWAC East. Bethune-Cookman is out of it, but of course they still want to win the Florida Classic. What are you seeing in this one?
Symone, I'm seeing a team that if FAMU is as long as it comes out and starts fast, this is going to be a win for them. This is also a Bethune-Cookman team that, again, you talk about one of those teams that the record shows that they haven't won that many games, but they're tough, they're tenacious, they play really hard each week. And when you look at their record, the Wildcats have won their last two conference games, albeit it's against Mississippi Valley and Alabama A&M, but in their 5 conference losses this season, the Wildcats only lost. The Wildcats only lost by more than 10 points once. So when I think about that statistic, this is a FAMU team that I hope that comes out fast. Obviously, we know that they set some of their starters last week against Lincoln, but obviously Jeremy Moose is coming back to start in this game. I'm expecting him to get out to a fast start. He had a lot of success last year, threw for 200 yards in FAMU's win last year. I'm expecting him to have a strong start. Also, FAMU is going to get Marcus Riley, one of their key wide receivers, back for this game. And, of course, some of their other wide receivers that have been impact players, Jamaria Shareed, Jamari Gassett. I'm expecting them to have strong games. And then also the running game was really strong, as it has been in most cases for FAMU all season, behind Jacquez Yant, Terrell Jennings, and Kelvin Dean. So I'm expecting them to get going in this game to also help Jeremy Moose. But if this FAMU team comes out slow, I feel like this is a game where it could get interesting and it could be closer than what it needs to be. But if all goes as planned, FAMU starts out strong. I think FAMU walks away with this win anywhere between, maybe 7 to 10 points.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see if they are going to be resting anybody or pulling any players earlier, because they did that last week. Now, mind you, that wasn't a classic against their biggest rival, but they do already have the SWAC East locked up and they do want to focus on staying healthy. So there could be a situation where, some players get pulled mid-game, but we'll have to see on Saturday. But you guys, this is an exciting week of HBCU football because we can find out one team that could potentially be representing the MEAC in the Celebration Bowl. So keep your eyes glued and stay tapped in with HBCU Game Day. I am Symone Stanley for Wilton Jackson. Until we talk to you guys next time. Bye.